Welcome to Westminster. Now, I'm a firm believer that when a politician has the guts to stand up and do the right thing, we should give them credit. And my guest today has certainly done that. He's the Ipswich Member of Parliament, Tom Hunt, one of the very first MPs, I believe, to call for the BBC licence fee to be ended. Tom, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Now, you put out this statement yesterday. For those who haven't read it yet, and I'll put a link up to it on this video. Can you just tell people what you've said?
Well, I mean, I've had concerns about BBC for quite a long time, but I've always been a bit reluctant to come to the position that I've come to because of a sort of a bit of an attachment to the BBC of old and really what it should be. But I think the situation over the last few months has gotten out of control, particularly with this culminated in this ridiculous debate over whether the lyrics to Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory should be removed from the last night of the proms, and some fairly outrageous comments made by the director of BBC Songs of Praise, and other things irritated me a few months ago, removing comedies from their iPlayer platform, the general news balance and lack of impartiality. So I did a poll of a number of my constituents had also contacted me with concerns. So I thought I'd run a poll on my social media channels, and I tried my best to try and target it as many constituents as possible. Ended up getting a sample of about 1,000. There was, I think, out of 1,000, there was about 90% were for getting rid of a licence fee. Of course, I realised this wasn't a scientific poll, but it's better than nothing, and I think it gives me a bit of a sense as to where a lot of people stand in my constituency. So yeah, yesterday I just put a statement out saying that after much reflection and careful thought, I reluctantly come to a conclusion that I think that the licence fee needs to be sort of got rid of at the nearest opportunity. Whether that means we start off by decriminalising non-payment of a licence fee as a precursor to going the whole hog, I don't know, but we need change, and I think we need to look to a future without the BBC as our state broadcaster.
Now, you've said in that statement, as it stands, I know the government is seriously considering decriminalising the non-payment of the BBC licence fee, and I'll encourage them to take this step.
Yeah.
How likely do you think that is now?
I think it's. I'm quite optimistic, actually. I think that there are a number of my colleagues who have actually got the same position that I've got, and there's a huge number who may not have at this stage come out with a firm position like I have, but who are potentially on the way to coming to the same position. So I think there is appetite within the Conservative Parliamentary Party to get change here. So I am sort of cautiously optimistic that is a step the government will take.
Now, just to give you a flavour of what the audience in Westminster stands, Tom, I mean, overwhelmingly they're saying it's time to ditch the licence fee, that they don't watch the BBC anymore. But some people do say, I once did like and support the BBC. And you say the same. You say, for me, growing up, the BBC represented a unique part of our national identity and role it played in our country's life, and always gave me an emotional connection, which I wouldn't have had with any other broadcaster. A lot of viewers are saying that's what the BBC used to be, almost unrecognisable now. How do you think we got to this point, Tom?
Well, I agree. I used to study history, and I'm aware of the role the BBC played, and try, behind the Iron Curtain and things like that, and internationally, it was held in high esteem, less so now than it used to. But and I've obviously got memories of growing up and watching. But actually, a lot of the stuff the BBC used to play, they don't play anymore. None of the cricket's on the BBC anymore. Not much of the football's on the BBC anymore. Grand Prix is not on the BBC anymore. I mean, I don't particularly like tennis, so I'm not that bothered about Wimbledon. But yeah, I get the point. And if I could. And that's why I've taken so long probably to come to a position that I've come to. But if I felt that there's a way of reforming the BBC so you could get it back onto a better, more positive course, then I'd probably go down that option. But I've sort of come to the conclusion that it's just so disconnected. Its leadership is just so disconnected. Its worldview is so disconnected from where the majority of people in the country are. But unfortunately, I think it's beyond reform. So I think it needs to go, and it's as I say, it's a reluctant conclusion that I've come to. I don't usually take so long to come to a position, but it's because of the fact that it's not straightforward. So I sympathise with what what your subscribers said there, and I think that. But none of us particularly like coming to this position. But it's one I think many of us feel like we've had to come to.
Yeah, and again, in your statement, you say the negative direction the BBC is heading in has only accelerated over recent months, and I don't believe the corporation can ever go back to a position where my concerns will be alleviated. What do you think's driven this acceleration to madness?
Well, I think probably I think that there's been this disconnect there for a long time. I think the organisation is incredibly sort of London-centric, very metropolitan, left liberal in its sort of not in its focus and its cultural hinterland. And I think that obviously what we've seen over the last few months with we've seen these sort of cultural issues and debates really come to the fore. So I think potentially that has really brought into people's focus just how out of touch the BBC is. So I think it's almost been the fact that these issues have been bubbling away. I mean, what led to this ridiculous debate over the last night of the proms? It was Black Lives Matter protests. That's what led to this debate over the last night of the proms. So I think it's the climate, the sort of the political climate in which we're living at the moment has probably brought some of these issues in relation to the BBC sharper to people's focus than has been the case in the past. And I think, many like me have come to the conclusion that this can't go on anymore. I mean, I think most people in this country are patriotic. We do like, I can't promise to you that I watch Last Night of the Proms final night, every year. I do occasionally. And the reason why I'd watch it would be to see, things like Rule Britannia Sung. I am patriotic, and I resent the fact that I am legally compelled to pay for an organisation that seems to be intent on chipping away at many of the things that make our country the country that it is. And a lot of us do enjoy, singing along to those songs and watching it. And there's also the other things as well. For example, taking down the, some of the comedies from the iPlayer platform. Again, I think things like Faulty Towers, Little Britain. They are iconic British comedies, and I think which tap into a sort of British sense of humour. And I think by removing those comedies from the platform, it sends a message out to everybody who still enjoys those comedies that they're wrong, and that this isn't the way. So it's become very censorious. It's become very. So there's two things. It's probably the sort of cultural. Aspect to it, but there's also the lack of news balance and Lewis Goodall and his some of his comments that he's made, and so it's a combination of the two really, but it's just been a real build up.
And finally, just before we move on, can you give people a feel for how widespread this feeling against the licence fee is among Conservative colleagues?
I mean, so within the parliamentary party, there is a new sort of informal grouping of Conservative MPs that's been set up called Common Sense Conservatives. We've got about 40 Conservative MPs in that group, and probably about 75% of the 40 are very active. And I would feel as though within that group, the vast majority of us have probably got the same position that I've got now. But I think there's probably a body. I think within the parliamentary party, I think you've probably got about 40 MPs who've got my position, but might not have been that vocal about it. But then I think you've got a real big number who are close to adopting it and maybe haven't quite gone as far as I've gone at the moment. But I definitely think the Conservative Parliamentary Party isn't a body worth giving up on when it comes to getting change on this particular issue.
Okay, I just want to move on now because there was a tweet you put out the other day, which is very interesting. I've highlighted it on this channel before. And you said, whether we want a culture war or not, it's very clear that one is upon us. We can put our fingers in our ears and pretend it's not happening, or we can do something about it. And obviously, we refer to the patriotic lyrics being stripped. We've seen our monuments being trashed. Tom, do you think, again, within the Parliamentary Conservative Party, this is a fact in terms of the culture war that they are aware of? Because there's a lot of concern, certainly amongst viewers of Westminster and the mainstream British public, I would say, that the symbols of our country are being attacked. What's the feeling, do you think, again, amongst you and your colleagues on this?
I think, again, some of us get it, particularly within that, the common sense group. But I don't think all of my colleagues get it. And I think that, ultimately, the people of this country elected a Conservative government. And I think they want that Conservative government to be running the country. And what they don't want is left liberal politics through a back door. But we have had many of these organisations. I mean, we've seen the British Library as well. I mean, where's that come out? Where's that come from? All of a sudden, we've got a sort of Marxist chief librarian at the British Library. So, I think we've, as I say, I mean, I think there is a real we call it what we want to call it, cultural war, big debate over different ideas and different worldviews, but fundamentally it's something it's a battle that needs to be had, and it's one that needs to be won. Because I think if you believe in democracy, then that we need to, and if you elect a Conservative government, that's what you should get. And I think that people are incredibly frustrated. They voted to leave the European Union. One of the main reasons they did that was to take back control of our borders. Yet they turn on their TV and they see, illegal immigration rife, on the, across the channel, and our Home Secretary with her hands tied, restricting her ability to do anything about it. And actually, even once we leave the European Union, there'll still be significant restrictions because of the European Convention of Human Rights and the Human Rights Act. And so once we leave the European Union, that's, I think, a precursor to other issues that we need to be looking at as well, European Convention of Human Rights and the Human Rights Act and other things as well. But I think it's I think sometimes we need more self-confidence. I think we need more self-confidence as a party. We need to believe more strongly in what we stand for, and also the people that we represent. And I think, I share the frustration. I'm incredibly angry about the illegal immigration we've seen. I'm incredibly angry about seeing these statues ripped down, seeing that there's national organisations being taken over by, a load of woke lefties. I mean, it's clearly that it's happened, and ultimately we've got to change it. We've got to push back on it. And I think if we don't, if the Conservative Party don't do that, then I think people will become incredibly disillusioned. And they're looking to the Conservative Party to do something about it, and we've got to make sure we do that. And within Parliament, particularly within that common sense group, rest assured that I am week by week trying to use the small bit of influence that I have as a backbench MP to try and push the Conservative Party in that direction. And I think there are many colleagues who get it, particularly in the seats we've won, particularly in the former Labour seats, where I think a lot of the voters in those seats are intrinsically, where we are when it comes to these issues. But we just need to stand up for them. We need to give them a reason to believe that it was the right decision that they made to vote Conservative last December, many for the first time. But as I say, I'm very patriotic, and I don't think we should be apologising for our country all the time, saying sorry about being British all the time, looking at reasons to apologise for being British. And you see, like, the director of the Songs of Praise saying that the British slavery was our Holocaust, when actually Britain did more than any other country to stamp out slavery. I just think it's an outrageous thing for her to have said. And how she feels that she's able to say that as somebody whose salary is paid for by me and you, I think is shocking. I mean, there's very little any consequence to that. Very rarely are they held up for that kind of outrageous behaviour. So it's, I've got a bit of a tangent there, but
no, look, I think hearing this from a Conservative MP will really be interesting and welcomed by the Westminster audience. And guys, as ever, remember to subscribe, remember to comment. I want to hear what you've got to say about Tom's comments here. Yeah, I mean, the classic one as well, of course, is the Emily Maitlis rant on Dominic Cummings, of which there seemed to be no consequence whatsoever. But Paul, I just want to move on to, because you're a proper Brexiteer, like me. What's your assessment on, obviously, the EU transition period? The government have been clear they're not going to extend it. The end of that is fast approaching. There's talk now of no deal becoming more likely, because the EU still insist that they want us to sign up to the so-called level playing field on areas like state aid. Dominic Cummings said to be completely against that. What's your assessment? Do you think we're heading for no deal? What's your position?
As somebody who's very much a strong Brexiteer, I am monitoring the situation closely. At the moment, I have I don't feel like I have any kind of reason to be concerned about the government's position. I've been looking for signs of backsliding and and at the moment, I haven't really detected anything for me to be concerned about. I think David Frost, who's been our chief negotiator, has been pretty robust with the EU, and that continues. I think the government is being absolutely sincere when it says that it is prepared to walk away with no deal. I think that I think our position is in a reasonable position. What I find strange is when I remember when the negotiations started with the EU, they were saying that we had to take a deal from a shelf and there wouldn't be any British specific deal. Whereas now they're saying completely the opposite. I mean, we're essentially saying we just want what other countries have got, like the deal that Canada have got, the deal that South Korea have got. And now they're saying that we can't do that. And actually, after all, we do need to have a British-specific deal because of our geographical proximity to the other EU countries. I just don't buy it. I think it's all part of a sort of gameplay at trying to, get us to cave in on various key demands. I think we need to be prepared to walk away. But my preference would still be for a trade deal along the lines of what sort of Canada have got. So because that would avoid any kind of short-term disruption, which would be good if we could avoid as much of that short-term disruption as possible. But we voted to leave the EU. My position is the same. We voted to leave the EU for a set of reasons. So it's pretty pointless to leave the EU if those sets of reasons don't come to fruition, which is controlling our borders, controlling our money, controlling our laws. And if we can't do that, then frankly, what's the point?
And finally, Tom, can I just ask you, as the Member of Parliament for Ipswich, what have you been doing? What's your sort of schedule looking like for the next few months? What sort of issues are you going to be focusing on?
Well, we just had summer recess, so I've been back in Ipswich for the last 6 weeks. I go back to Parliament on Tuesday, and we've got a real packed agenda between now and the end of and between now and Christmas. It's quite daunting looking at it. We've got obviously Brexit negotiations, going to be climaxing, and the transition period is going to be ending at the end of December. So I imagine there's going to be a significant amount of legislation to do with that coming through Parliament. We've got the furlough scheme ending at in the end of October. So I don't know. That's obviously something that I'm concerned about, and the government will have to probably take a variety of different steps there, which will require legislation. And we've obviously got the schools going back. I'm on the Education Select Committee, so whenever anything happens with regards to schools, that's something I take a significant interest in. And then in addition to all of those things, I look to represent my constituency in Parliament. On Tuesday, I'll be asking a question about the local A&E department in Ipswich. But it is going to be a very busy few weeks, and usually you have conference recess. So what happens is you go back for like 3 weeks, and then you're off for like another 3 weeks, because I don't know why we need a week off for a Lib Dem Party conference, but we have done in the past. So it's been like the Lib Dem have had one, Labour, and we have been Conservative have one. So we've usually had like 2 or 3 weeks further recess during that period, but that obviously there's no conferences. I think we've got a virtual conference, but I don't know how that's going to work. But there's no actual conferences, so I think it's possible we'll be straight from now into Christmas. So it's going to be fairly full on, But it's and it's I think rarely. I mean, looking at the next 3 months ahead, I don't think it is pretty rare that you'd be looking ahead at 3 months where quite so much is going to happen. I mean, hopefully we're in a good place in 3 or 4 months' time. Hopefully we've left, the transition period's ended, and we have a good deal with the EU that allows us to, claim all the freedoms we want. If not, second best choice would be no deal. And hopefully, obviously the end of furlough is going to be a difficult period, but hopefully we're able to minimise the issues there and keep unemployment as low as possible, though it will increase. And hopefully the schools can get back, and hopefully we avoid a second wave of the pandemic, and we're able to just get back to normal, really, which I think is where really most of us want to go, because we've got to get back to normal. I think we really do.
Well, look, Tom, thanks a lot for joining the Westminster channel today. Fascinating interview. I hope we can talk again soon. And guys, if you've enjoyed this interview, remember to subscribe to the channel, click like and click the bell so you don't miss future reports. Tom Hunt MP, we'll catch up soon, I'm sure. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.